What is up, Bird brothers and sisters? Lindy End Zone back in the building for the touchdown, taking the lead for the Eagles, one video at a time. And, man, I'm treating y'all today. Touchdown Talk episode 2. After the first one was showcased around 5 p.m., me and JC Eagles Talk have already previewed and assessed the offensive side of the football for the Philadelphia Eagles against the Denver Broncos. So now I have here Philly Sports Talk Podcast. He is going to join me in assessing the defensive side of the ball and what we think the Eagles ultimately, including Jonathon Gannon, what they ultimately need to do in order to help the offense secure a win. And, well, without further ado, we're going to get into it. But first, you already know the deal. You like the diversity of fandom that I bring to the table. It's easy to hit the subscribe, be a part of the End Zone fam. And, of course, for my partner on this episode, make sure to give his channel a shout out. See what he's got going on over there between Sixers, Eagles, and the Philadelphia Phillies. And even covering anything MLB of importance, whether it's coaching changes, management changes, player retirements.
Exactly. I've done free agency. I've done the trade deadline, like you name it. Plus, I have a new show coming out on the network on Friday night.
So there you all go. A guy keeping up with his programming on the channel. So you don't get a lot of regurgitated stuff. Always keeping ourselves updated with the best content that we can. So once again, appreciate you coming on and assessing the defense with me as we get into episode 2 of Touchdown Talk, my new program for my channel. Everybody's got some new stuff.
Exactly. Well, the show that I'm bringing out is actually on for the Spotlight Sports Network. So I mean, I have my own series as well called Sports Talk Podcast with Robert and Tyler. Because Tyler's a good old buddy of mine from high school, and he decided to hop on the train and become a co-host of the show. And then Darian was kind of bringing up the idea of having new shows on the network. Then a light bulb kind of clicked off in my head and said, "Look, maybe we're gonna have an all MLB podcast," because I just, for some reason, it's just what came to mind, because now with baseball season coming up very soon, why not really talk about, like the very first episode we're going to be doing is talk about free agency and the other topics, who's going to sign where, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, well, as far as free agency goes for my Braves, they need to grab Freddy Freeman as soon as possible, get him locked up. He's been a Brave already for 10 years. He's a Brave through and through. Finally got himself a World Series championship after all this time, dedicating his career to the city of Atlanta.
That's the thing too. Like, people are, and still people some kind of give me shit because I actually had some couple favorite Braves players growing up. Greg Max is one of them. Just like you cannot, and Chipper Jones was my other. Those were my top 2 when it comes to the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I mean, we were the team. When you think of the 90s, the Braves were it, although they couldn't finish when they got to the World Series. They got denied twice by the Yankees, and then finally took care of business in 95. But that's not the here nor there for now, because we already know, in my case of happiness, if you will,
for us it's pain.
Yeah. Well, there's Phillies fans still trying to roast and get under my skin about it.
But knowing you, like you just pretty much just have that thick skin. Like it doesn't really bother you.
No, they're all high and mighty about Bryce Harper getting the National League MVP. Well,
he's been trying to make a case for a couple of years now.
Yeah. And it's good. It's good for him, absolutely. And we know.
And the fact that I'm surprised that Freddy Freeman was not in conversation, kind of really,
I know,
surprised me. But I mean,
Well, it was him and Austin Riley, but
I was really hoping Austin Riley because Austin Riley just a superb talent, just an under the radar kind of talent. But
well,
yeah,
for the last few years of me watching the Braves and watching Austin's growth, Braves fandom didn't want, like, they weren't big fans of him. They wanted to give up early. I'm like, no. Once he starts to hit the once he gets used to the off speed pitches, because he can nail the fastball. But once he gets better plate discipline and a better eye, as soon as he cracks on them off speed pitches, he's going to be a fantastic third baseman. And look what happened.
exactly, and that's the reason. And that's why when the got it. Yeah, that's the thing too. Like that's just why I think when they signed the Braves signed Josh Johnson, that's what I feel like kind of put a halt in his growth.
Yeah, although I do miss the Rain Man, and I think he does miss playing for Atlanta, because he had something going with the
Oh,
Braves.
that's for sure.
I do miss him. He was that year we signed him. He was phenomenal. He just had a resurgence after leaving Toronto, and he just took his game to another level playing for
Mm-hmm.
us. Him and Adam Duvall. That was an underrated uh, trade to get him back from the Marlins. Adam Duvall never should have left the first time, and he ended up being a crucial piece of that World Series victory. But
I think for you guys, I think you need a better backup catcher because I feel like as much as it pains us because Darnell was part of our system since 2009, and the fact that we blew it and let him go, and that's another thing too, like because like he can hit. The problem is his defense. Like that's the problem I see with Darnell at they're out the postseason. Like
yeah, he just even for base stealing, he doesn't have much of a rocket to get it to second quick enough. It's either his arm or his reaction time. I'm not exactly sure, but before before we continue to continue getting carried away,
yep.
with baseball, because that could be a topic for another day. Let's get into what the show is going to be painfully about, but we're going to try and ease
Exactly.
we're going to try and ease that pain as much as possible with this Eagles defense, and going up against let's face it, the Broncos have a average-esque type of offense. Even though Teddy Bridgewater is having a decent year, he's taking care of the football. He's at 70% completion percentage. He has around the same amount of interceptions as Jalen Hurts, so he's doing a good job protecting the football. Like Jalen Hurts is. The only problem with the Broncos offense is that they're not necessarily high, like um,
It's not like a high scoring
like a
offense.
yeah, they're not a high scoring offense.
I'm
They're not going to kill you down the field.
I
More
mean,
they're
I feel
more
like that Dallas game was just kind of a I'm not saying a fluke, but I just kind of feel like they actually played to they kind of I don't know. There's something about that Dallas game. I just like it just turns around like how the Dallas or Broncos just completely demolished the Dallas Cowboys. That's like the only good receiver that they have was Jerry Judy.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily just Jerry Judy, because he's not really getting the touches as he's not really getting the touches that other receivers are. So, for example, Judy's only working with 16 catches for 180 yards on the year. He's not really doing much in that offense. It's mostly been going through guys like Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton. They have a combined 1,100 yards and and about 75 catches combined. In a span of Cortland has 64 targets. Tim Patrick's at 47 targets. Those are going to be the two receivers that we're going to need this Eagles secondary to take away. Now, if you have a focus of taking away the team's, if you have a focus of taking away the team's best receivers, then they're going to try and punish you in the run game, which they already have that going for them in the 1-2 punch between Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, who are rushing for almost a combined 1,000 yards on over 200 attempts. So it seems to me Denver does have a nice balance, similar to what our Eagles like to do the last, well, only 2 weeks. but
Yeah,
but
that's for certain.
Denver's balanced enough in that aspect. Like I said, in 9 games, Teddy Bridgewater 5-4 record. He's above 500, 70% completion percentage, 14 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, taking care of the football. Yards per attempt are his yards per attempt are decent. It's actually pretty good if you think about it. He's averaging almost about
He's a solid
8
quarterback in
yards.
his own right. I mean, he's
Yeah,
not going to be like the flashiest quarterback, but he can. And I think the one way he can probably, God forbid, if he kills us, is probably that deep ball. He knows how to throw a deep ball.
yeah, because he's not the quarterback that he once was. More of a underrated-esque type of quarterback when he was leading those Viking squads pre 2015. He's not that guy anymore, but he's still serviceable and like
And he can still give you
serviceable,
an
average,
accurate
and
passes.
like, yeah, that's what you're going to get out of a guy like Teddy Bridgewater. QBR is only a 51. He's right there at average. The only difference is if we're comparing quarterbacks to the respected teams in this conversation, Jalen Hurts doesn't get sacked the way Bridgewater does. Now, of course, Hurts has better
Mobility.
maneuverability with his athleticism. He's only gotten sacked 15 times. But that's also a test to the performance of the offensive line. Um, I believe it's easy to say the Eagles have a better offensive line than the Denver Broncos do, but of course the offenses do have their intricacies that make them the way they are as far as difference goes. I think they're both West Coast type of offenses, but of course, Denver's going to do things a little bit different, and let's be real. They actually run the football a little more consistently than the Eagles have up to this point. And of course, that is one of the many downfalls to the Eagles defense this year under first-time defensive coordinator Jonathon Gannon. And when we're looking over the team statistics here, there's not a lot to be impressed with whatsoever. They're as far as as far as yards, the Eagles are average. They're 15th in the league in yards allowed. And we already know we don't take away the football, and this has been an issue since the Jim Schwartz regime, like we know all so well. This team just doesn't take the football away. They don't force turnovers. We're 25th in the league in forcing turnovers. We're 28th in lost fumbles or forced fumbles for that matter. Um, we've only forced three actually. It's either 2 or 3 up to this point, and 28th in the league, not great. We're 30th in first downs allowed.
I mean, there's
It seems like it's getting worse before it gets better. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um,
I can't agree. I can agree with that.
it's I mean at this point it's putting such a bad taste in people's mouths, and but the other unfair aspect to it is that they want to jump down Gannon's throat right away, but sometimes you have to remember, there's
It,
there's two sides. There's fences are dividers. So there's two sides to this. One side it is the coordinator schematically, and the other side is just you know the players that he has at his disposal. Let's be real. As
Exactly.
far as talent, this Eagles defense isn't very talented. Outside of our veterans, we don't have a lot to work with at all. And
I mean, the only guy
especially
that I
with
can feel like that has a lot of talent and going in years to come is Josh Sweat. But the fact of this that our our defensive side is old. I mean, there's no
yeah.
way to just put him. Steven Nelson is entering what age 29 season, if I'm not mistaken, or is it age 30? I know he's somewhere in his prime.
I think no, I think Steven Nelson is either turning 29 or he already turned 29, so he's a little bit younger than Darius Slay.
But yeah, Slay's 30. I mean, Fletcher Cox, God knows how long he's going to be lasting in the league because he's already 31. Kerrigan, what the hell are you doing with him? And the fact that obviously the fact that we're still stuck with Barnett, for Christ's sakes, for was it 5 seasons already with him? Like how do we know? Like, because I was like, I mean, I just kind of feel like that's just like the weak spot. I mean, we have a decent amount of vets, but I feel like we could at least trade some. Hopefully, by the at least try to at least get something in return. Hopefully, try to at least get this. Actually, make this defense a little bit younger. Compared to because if you look at the offensive side, we're very young on the offensive side of the football. I mean, except for the right tackle in the center, but I mean that's pretty much about it.
Yeah, I think minus the offensive line as a whole, offensively we have youth to build on, and in some aspects it's good, and in some aspects it brings a little bit of impatience, and that's what's happening on the defensive side of the ball, in terms of the defensive coordinator, and in trying to figure out what the hell Jonathon Gannon is doing schematically to make a difference in these football games. It's very
Obviously not
confusing.
blitzing a lot, which in reference to the Lions game, I know they blitzed a hell of a ton against the Lions, despite the fact that obviously the Lions they are a bad team. Let's be real, but that's the thing too. Like you said, offensively we can't run the foot. We have a hard time running the football, and defensively we have a hard time blitzing because we have defensive ends like that can really get around like the offensive line with like no problems if we started blitzing more instead of having these soft coverages or these zone coverages where they're getting burnt left and right in certain games. But I mean, at times it may work, like the 49ers game. I would have thought we've been blown out, but they actually held that team to like less than 20 points. It's like, I mean, like you said, it's a 50-50 with Jonathon Gannon.
And it's so frustrating because you watch that Lions game and you mentioned about the amount of times that we were blitzing that offensive line of the Lions, and you have to think that they understood the type of talent or the lack thereof that that the Lions don't have, and it's like easy pickings for them. Well, and then the next, like, you go from the Lions and then you come to the Chargers. Well, yeah, Gannon is blitzing at times and he's doing a little bit more, but that little bit more is not enough because the secondary, while your defensive line is not getting pressure whatsoever, I mean, Hargrave and Cox just did not show up that game. I think the only sack in that game was by Derek Barnett by some miraculous kind of effort. Barnett, I think, was the only one to get a sack on that D line. But when you're looking for Hargrave and you're looking for Cox, they don't show up. When the defensive line can't get home, it's just as bad of a formula when you have your corners in such a soft coverage that you're allowing Justin Herbert to sit in the pocket and continue to pat the football until he picks until he picks the
Just picks it
receiver he
apart.
absolutely wants to put him in the best field position to continue to get deep into Eagles territory and score touchdowns. I mean, the dude had upwards of close to a 90% completion percentage. It's disgraceful.
I
When you
mean,
do that kind of a defensive performance.
exactly, and that could be said the same thing about how Derek Carr just ran all over us when we played the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
You know, almost, I think we're like a 90 something completion percent. I think we missed like 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken, in that game.
Yeah,
It's like, and the fact that we're seeing like these quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, who's having an on-off year, and the fact that he's had a decent like the fact that he had like an 80 something completion percentage, but the fact that he was always still having an off year, it's like it's embarrassing to the offense. And I don't know, it's just like this team is like, yeah, I mean, we get it, we have first time coaching, but I don't know, like you said, like they're kind of made, like you can look at this both ways. Like at times they're coming down Gannon's throat for not making adjustments like early in games, like to like, like instead of like having these soft coverages, at least call a blitz, a couple blitzing here and there. And then with Sirianni actually running the goddamn football. I mean, it's like, it's plain and goddamn simple.
For reference, when you brought up Patrick Mahomes, he was 24 of 30 with a passer rating of 131.
Oh my Lord.
Because that was the game that Sirianni thought it would be a good idea to let Jalen Hurts throw 48 times. 48 times.
And Patrick Mahomes throwing for 34 times. Like,
I mean, it's a great example of the imbalance that you just take note of and watch, like how pathetically it is. So as we continue to get into how poor the Eagles defense is statistically, as far as pass attempts, the Eagles defense is 10th in the league with pass attempts for the opponent. They're 12th in yards. Touchdowns and interceptions, they are bottom 12 at 20th. So yeah, we already established that they don't take the ball away. Rushing yard. Now this is one of the only things the Eagles defense is decent in. They don't allow teams to have good success in running the football. We're 6th in yards per carry, with only allowing right at 4 yards a carry for running backs. But unfortunately, we allow the 20th most yards. We're 23rd in touchdowns. So although these teams are not averaging that great of a clip, they're still scoring via the run game. It's it's quite fortunate. And then and then defensively, we're because we can't stop anybody. Average drive time, we're 31st in the league, and opponents' average time for drive at 3 minutes and 6 seconds. We're allowing opponents to start on their own 29-yard line. So again, bottom 12 in the league. So there's really no positive to take out of this other than us allowing.
they have like a decent learn how to stop the running game. But the problem is though, like you said, we're at 20th, and at times we have a tendency to fall apart against the run game. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, the only guy I think kind of really, I'm trying to think. Like, I know Switch had a decent amount of yards, but we kind of kept him quiet for a little bit. Who who else? I mean, was it Sutton? Was this Sutton with the Atlanta Falcons? I'm trying to think.
Running back for the Falcons.
Yeah.
I forget his name, but they also used Cordell Patterson as a gadget.
Yeah,
as a gadget guy. He didn't do much of anything. I think their running back was a rookie, if I'm not mistaken. But I can't,
because I know their running game kind of killed
us
us in the first half,
mm-hmm.
and then obviously then we strengthened up in the second half. But and then obviously with the Dallas game, we couldn't stop Zeke or Tony Pollard, which kind of showed our flaws, like right then and there. Like we cannot plug up the holes, especially up the middle. Like if it's like on the edges, like we can get around the edges, but up the middle is where we have the most trouble.
Yeah. So for reference as far as our run defense goes, the last 9 games, only 2 teams have failed to run more than 100 yards on us. That being excuse me. That being the Chargers and, well, for what it's worth, the Detroit Lions. Chargers only managed to get 89 yards. They're not a very good running team to begin with, so that's not a surprise. Lions are the Lions, so
no surprise there either.
They only got 57. But every other team we faced had 100 yards or more. Kansas City was able to rush for 200 yards. Dallas 160. Atlanta Falcons did have 124. They gashed us in the first half with the run until we clamped them down in the second half, starting in the third quarter, and they just got smothered, overwhelmed. San Fran only ran for $117, not too much over 100. Vegas had 119. And Tampa and Carolina were under 110. So I mean, we are giving up yardage with the run, and that's only because of Gannon's system does not allow for a lot of just letting the D line pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. There's a lot of disguising. There's a lot of stunts. It's them. It's them just. It's
obviously not working for them.
Just playing conservative, and when they get conservative, then
other teams are going to make us pay for it.
Yeah. So and then turns the creation of holes for the running back to penetrate through the line, and because our linebackers are
they're just a dumpster fire. I'll just be blunt.
They're just not good, and they're not playing, and they're not playing down near the line of scrimmage because there's such cushion at times between the first and second level. Some of these guys are just not quick enough to the edge, or they're just flat out not good at tackling. So that's just that's the worst part. That's one of the worst parts when you look at this defense, because they're unable to stop the run. Just like we preach asking Sirianni to do this for Jalen Hurts, who's a developing quarterback. Let your quarterback flow through the run game to allow the pass game to come to him a lot easier. Well, that's what opposing offenses are doing to the Eagles defense.
And I made this point too. Like when I have made a couple of videos about it, it's just like if you set up the run game, man, it makes your pass game more effective. Because like you could see it, like I mean, as much as they really hate to say it, I mean, let's take a look at Dallas, man. They have 2 good running backs in Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. Mm-hmm. When fortunately when Mike McCarthy called the running game for the first, I think sometimes the very first play, like it just makes Dak much more effective with this passing game. And at times it may work, but sometimes it can fall apart. Then again, it is Dallas. At times, it can work for them. Sometimes it can blow up in their faces. But that's just kind of where I want to, because it's kind of where, like, if you don't set up the running game, which is probably you should at least do that at least almost maybe say 80 or 90% of the time. Like it just shows like, okay, so we can get ourselves in good field position, but at times knowing us, we know how to blow it. I mean, there's really no one positive way to put it.
Well, simply put, with these, with these offenses that are predicated on running the football, they're presenting, um, a presence of a threat. They're making you afraid of their running game. Because the Eagles don't do that, it makes it gives the defense such an easier job to clamp us down. Well, look at how our defense goes through a similar struggle to why our offense can't stay as consistent as it is. Because our running game has been non-existent up to this point, except for the last 2 games, because our defense can't stop the run at a consistent clip, then in turn creates more and more disaster. And like we've seen with a number of quarterbacks having a completion percentage of 75 or higher, and the latest one being Justin Herbert. Of all quarterbacks, between him and Patrick Mahomes and Derek Carr, these are not the kind of quarterbacks that you want to pick apart your defense. just because of the fact that you can't stop anybody. So you're creating a double negative there. Just because your run defense, because your run defense can't stop anybody, and your corners are in soft coverage, there's no challenge. You're not getting in the receiver's face. You're not trying to disrupt their route, make them uncomfortable. So the quarterback has to hold on to the ball longer. It's it's like you flipping your PlayStation on and throwing in Madden and going into a quick game on arcade difficulty. That's
That's just how it is. I mean,
defense is basically doing for these competent level football teams, and that's why we're in the position that we are now.
I mean, it is like you said, man. It's just like it feels like the Eagles are playing teams that it looks like they have the sliders only, like you said, make that Madden reference, like have the sliders turned off on easy difficulties. Like we're letting teams, and especially like the Raiders, the Bucks. I mean, I knew the Bucks it was going to be a loss because obviously, it's Tom Brady, man. Let's face it, man. They got Brady, Gronk, and Fournette still an effective running back that the Bucks have. Plus, I mean, now you got Carr who can pretty much have a lot of weapons he can use at his disposal, and we saw it firsthand that he picked apart our defense, and we couldn't stop Renfro, we couldn't stop Waller, and unfortunately, we couldn't stop their disgraced wide receiver in Henry Ruggs III. I mean, we had times we stopped him, but I just kind of feel like, I think the only guy we had a hard time stopping was what the fuck's his name? Tyreek Hill from the Chiefs. Couldn't think of it.
I think everybody has a hard time stopping Tyreek because the dude's
just too fast.
The dude doesn't show up on radar guns. Let's be real. He's outpacing those. The cops can't get a reading on this guy. So I mean, let's just, and on that, let's be happy we don't play the Rams this year.
Thank God.
I'm just glad we didn't play the Rams. So now it's if Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods weren't bad enough, now Odell is going over there. You got Matt Stafford, who's a gunslinger. You got a sophisticated offensive line, and Sean McVay.
And you got a deadly defensive line led by Aaron Donald. I mean,
yeah, Von Miller just went over there. The Bears D lineman that the D lineman from the Bears that they gave up on, and now he's wrecking havoc with Aaron. Like, oh, good Lord! But as we're getting up there in time for episode 2, we still got a little bit left in the program. So with that, I think we need to dive a little bit deeper into a diagnostic on what our opinions should be and how Jonathon Gannon should attack the Broncos offense. So, like we were talking about, the Broncos aren't the Broncos don't blow you away offensively. Yes,
They have an okay offense because it's like on it. I mean, obviously you said like we said. I mean, if you guys not have watched Dallas and Denver game,
mm-hmm.
yeah, Denver does not have a good. They have a decent offense, but like Lindy said, they can't blow you away, and they're not that much of high scoring. But like I said before, in the Dallas game, they actually surprisingly put up another amount of points, which is the first time that's kind of happened to them this year. Teddy Bridgewater, still a decent quarterback, but still kind of not the long term answer for them. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, still a good wide receiver for them. I feel like they have a lot of retooling to do because obviously they only have one player left from that Super Bowl 50 team, which is absolutely insane. That's just how much McMahon is. But I mean, the only thing you got Surtain, who's a stud in the making for them on the defensive side of the football. But I just kind of feel like it's just like Denver cannot, like Lindy said, Denver cannot blow you away. Like we have to take advantage of this team that, yeah, I mean they have some decent weapons to use, but Bridgewater is a pocket quarterback, which we saw it with Jared Goff and Matt Ryan. We exposed the weakness that they have. They're not as mobile as Jalen Hurts.
I mean, overall, the weakness that they share is their teams. Let's be real. Even though the Falcons have been performing a little above some people's expectations with how they've been up to this point, and this is with them losing Calvin Ridley to take a break from football, and now the emergence of Kyle Pitts is coming after we didn't think that Matt Ryan was going to get Kyle going because we shut him down in week one. Kyle didn't do anything, but of course that was week one. Everybody was starting off fresh, especially after a 2020 season, to how much the pandemic affected the National Football League and every single franchise. There's a bit of a difference there. So as we look at this Broncos offense, I still feel in the back of my mind that they're most possibly a quarterback away from taking them to the next level because they do have a nice group of young talent, and especially considering the not necessarily I don't want to call it depth because some people don't understand the true definition when you bring up depth meaning the amount of good players, not like it's a quality over quantity aspect when you talk about depth on a football team. It's like how many serviceable, like good players at said position. And the Broncos do have that at the receiver spot. And you could very well say with Noah Fant leading the tight end group that they have it at tight end, and Melvin Gordon finding himself again in a different system for the Broncos. You could say a little bit at that running back spot. So they have a good group of talent, but is the quarterback taking them to a next level? Not necessarily, especially with especially with how good of a defense the Broncos have to be second in points allowed. The Denver Broncos are second in points allowed. Just let that sink in, everybody. This is what the Eagles offense is going to be facing. But in terms of the defensive side of the ball, when we get back to that, um, you know, like I said, they have a good group. They have a good group of players, but can we stress Teddy enough to keep him uncomfortable throughout the game? I think that's going to be the biggest question. Jonathon Gannon is going to have to create an emphasis on letting his secondary be a little more aggressive. Let's see some good man coverage. Let's see them press guys at the line of scrimmage, get in their face, don't give them any room to work in the progression of their routes, make Teddy uncomfortable in the pocket. Let that defensive line feast. They're going to have a bit of an easier time, to me, getting to Teddy Bridgewater than they were able to with Justin Herbert. So I think the important things here for the Eagles to do is analyze your matchups and scheme accordingly. And we very may well see a difference in how the defense plays, but it's going to come down to how Gannon coordinates everything.
I mean, exactly. I mean, and not to mention too, like you said, Denver is second in points allowed. Plus, their offensive line is okay, but it's like you said, if they can get pressure and make Teddy Bridgewater feel uncomfortable in the pocket, if you blitz them, which I think that's what I really hope Jonathon Gannon should do on a consistent basis, to the point where. And another thing too, also let your defense play to their strength. Like if you use man coverage for your secondary, so fine. I mean, it'll be easier than having a blown soft zone coverage where you're constantly giving up a lot of yards in the air. If you can play man to man on certain spots and actually disrupt the timing of Teddy Bridgewater in the offense. I mean, I think the Eagles defense should not have a hard time containing the Denver Broncos offense.
It's also a positive when we're talking about what we hope the defense does, because we certainly can't say expectations here, because
we got very low expectations.
Expectations started in the beginning of the year, and look what happened. All this stuff hearing about how Gannon's going to disguise things, and he brings up the hits principle, and well, I guess he talked about it on opposite day, because we didn't, we
didn't show up.
We're not getting any of that whatsoever, even though he is trying. But I think where the formula fails is you're giving a first-time defensive coordinator a very high limitation of talent at his disposal. And that's not a good combination. So
plus, I don't think this is, and not to mention too, our defense is, like we said before, our defense is getting older, and obviously Jonathon Gannon has to deal with that. And look, and this may not be on Gannon too. This also can translate to the front office, and it probably was how we need to see. And obviously, we still got to need to take into account. No, we still need to get a handful. We need to start looking at linebackers. We still need to improve our secondary.
Yes, please, linebacker, please.
At least take
the position,
and maybe at least get another edge rusher or two to help out that front seven, because Josh Sweat and obviously Kerrigan, God forbid, they can't do it themselves. And Barnett, definitely not the goddamn answer. I mean, it's time to get him the boot out of here.
He'll be gone. Yeah,
and just don't miss out on the needs, because obviously everyone is going after. I mean, obviously Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, it's just kind of feel like it's where we still got to. I mean, I get it. It's a 17-game season, and Jonathon Gannon has limited players to work with because of the age range that some of our players are ranging from. I mean, we're not a young defensive team. Offensively, yes, but defensively, it's mixed and match with them.
I mean, this isn't even benefiting the rookies right now. I mean, it's like, well, how is the development going for guys like Patrick Johnson, Teron Jackson, Milton Williams? I mean, how are when they get their snaps, when they're getting their chances on the field, like how are they looking on a week-to-week basis? It's it's almost like, because of how poor the Eagles defense plays, back in that Super Bowl year, for how dominant our defense was, how consistent it was. We were able to continue to switch guys out and give players breathers just because of the fact that they were doing their job. They weren't giving up easy plays to the opposing offense. These guys were able to take a breath on the sideline, force 3-and-outs. The offense is playing good enough to keep themselves in the lead as far as time of possession. Because let's be real. When we talked about that Broncos and Dallas game, that was one of the reasons why Denver scored so much. Dallas's offense got absolutely smothered by their defense, and in turn, what does that do? that just completely swings the pendulum in time of possession to where the Broncos
Yes,
have.
and I think in that game, I think it was like over like with the time of possession Denver had. I think they were almost close to 30 minutes and over almost time of possession compared to the almost.
I think it was like 40 minutes.
Yeah, compared to what was like 15 minutes for Dallas, maybe less. Like it just showed, and like this is why I think at times it's like this is why you're seeing players like Cox are having a hard time getting reset. Like let them take a breather. And having like someone like Milton Williams come out and kind of like take some of his snaps and just kind of and then not say try to replicate that what our defense was, but kind of just kind of switch guys in and out to where like it could be effective at times. God forbid it. Hope so.
And again, that's where the double negative comes in because the fact that the defensive line is not getting home, and then you have the corners playing such soft coverage, that's allowing the quarterback to get rid of the football a lot faster. So you're not giving your defensive line a chance to challenge the offensive line, beat their matchups, and get to the quarterback. I mean, it just continues to be a recipe for disaster. I think one of the only positives that we can look forward to in terms of this game as we analyze the injury report here, as I was saying, the only guys questionable are Andre Dillard and Josh Sweat. So the rest of the individuals on the injury report. So yeah, we're not going to count guys on rest, which include Fletcher Cox, Fletch, Lane Johnson, and Jason Kelsey. Well, two of those guys are offensive, but defensively, when we were seeing that Slay had a hamstring issue, which I remember going back to 2019, that was one thing that he was dealing with that kept him out for 6 games, I think. And I remember when we signed him, and I was hoping that his hamstring wouldn't bother him again. Well, it didn't necessarily in his first year here in 2020, but now it's starting to get to him because of the increased workload that Gannon is putting on these guys. So again, it goes from a double negative to a triple negative and maybe a quadruple negative.
Exactly.
Falling, freaking a fallout's going to happen at any point in time. Turn out the lights. Good night. See you later. Like it's just bad. So I mean, positively, Slay's going to be good to go for this game. Rodney McLeod's going to be good to go for this game. Avonte Maddox, Javon Hargrave. And so those are some pretty key players at said positions that will
despite the fact that Hargrave was the fact that Hargrave is 4th in the league. I mean, the fact that if he can stay healthy, it really is a huge plus for us because and we've seen it too. At times there are games he may not show up, but in other times he's been very consistent. Like the most recent, other than the Chargers game, it's been really consistent. Obviously, the fact that he's what does he get like 6 or 7 sacks this year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Like this is why I think why I would thought this is kind of where he kind of like showed what he was capable of back in Pittsburgh. It's like, okay, now we're seeing what the old Javon Hargrave can do. I mean, yeah, he may not be getting any younger, but he can still beat you going up the middle. Like it's really that simple. And just like keeping those guys healthy can go along with the defense. But the problem is though, you gotta like ease up especially on the secondary too. Like you said, Slay's not getting any younger. Plus, he had an issue with his hamstring. Now we're kind of seeing that on firsthand. That's the thing. Myself, let's just try to ease the workload on him because let's face it, he's already he's already hit his 30s. So, I mean, who knows how much longer he has left in the tank? I mean, despite the fact that this is his last year of his extension.
Yeah. So, if I can bottom line it, and I'll throw another point out. The defensive line is down bad when your captain, who's 33, we lose him to an Achilles injury, and how much an effect
that it does take
Brandon Graham meant to this defensive line. A 33-year-old defensive end. I mean, we're talking about the age of our guys at our skill positions, and trying to get younger, but that's the problem. Sometimes these youthful players, because of that lack of talent, it gets harder and harder to get rid of the veterans because of their experience, their consistency, and their dominance at times over a good stretch of the season. They're too hard to replace. And so now you combine that with a scheme that's not helping any of the young guys succeed and build confidence and feel that they can compete at this level. It's just gonna continue to get worse.
exactly.
Dave Fizz in the building. What's going on, man?
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like hypothetical, if Brandon Graham didn't go out, I mean, results could have been a little bit like this season could have been a little bit different the way that we see it now compared to, let's say, because the fact that obviously that Achilles is not, and the fact that we also lost Brandon Brooks too, like his impact kind of, the fact that when we lost him, like that kind of took another hit to us too. It's just like, yeah, Brandon Brooks, I mean, give credit to where credit is due. The fact that the guy came back from 2 Achilles injuries, especially the second one after 6 months, which is absolutely superhuman. It's like there's no way for a guy who has dealt with 2 Achilles injuries should be coming back from that kind of injury in 6 months. Because, like, then again, Brandon Brooks was kind of young. Still, how old is Brandon Brooks? What, somewhere in his 20s? It had to be. He's got to be somewhere in his 20s.
No, Brooks is.
I know
Brooks
it's probably like late 20s,
30s.
early 30s, something like around, and then that age range. But all in all, like losing those 2 guys kind of does hurt us, because obviously Brandon Graham probably is going to retire as an Eagle at some point in his career. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of players on this team that are not going to last much longer in the league. Kelsey's obviously is one of them. Brandon Graham's another. Fletcher Cox, I'll give him like at least 2-3 years tops. I mean, that's just kind of, it's just like these old guys who've been around for a good chunk of time, they're kind of just breaking down. Like I mean, the way that we've gone about it's like, we drafted some pretty good offensive linemen now that I think about it, because Herbig's has been pretty solid for us. Driscoll, on the other hand, has been solid. Dickerson's kind of a question mark because obviously with that injury issue that he's been dealing, I feel like it's still that injury issue that he's still dealing with. That I think it was like a foot injury, if I'm not mistaken.
He tore his ACL in both knees.
Oh Lord. That's like, and like I said, I mean, Dickerson's a huge question mark, but I think the potential is there to hopefully be a Kelsey successor.
Yeah, the question mark is more predicated on his longevity more than his talent level. But like I said, schematically, whether it's offense or defense, you gotta help your players out. Just like I was saying in the earlier live stream with JC, as we diagnosed the offense, our offensive line is built to run the football. They don't necessarily have the stamina all game to just sit back and pass protect. You gotta get them out there. You gotta get them away from the trenches. Let them lead. Let them lead the charge. Run people over like we seen Mailata in week 1. Pancake that one safety like a tank, and and let Rager score. Let Rager score a touchdown off of that. That's what the offensive line is built to do. Well, in the case of the defensive line is built to go after the quarterback, where you have your athletic defensive ends that can really tuck underneath bigger tackles and beat them to the edge. You got Hargrave and Cox in the middle that are meant to punish the guards and the centers and just run them over. We're not using them to that kind of capability anymore. And then when we lose Brandon Graham, he was that pillar of the run defense. That's what makes him as special as he is. And it was very apparent. It was very apparent when he got hurt.
We were going to be screwed.
We couldn't defend the run anymore. So as we draw this stream to a close, and I did want to make sure that this one lasted as long as episode 1. We'll keep it fair here in terms of airtime, but I will leave this partially to you. So I've discussed a little bit on what I felt the Eagles defense should need to do in order to win this football game, because you can win with one side of the football or both. So because we're breaking down defense, what does the defense need to do in order for the Eagles to win this game against Denver?
All right, like the first thing is like, to go back to your point, like we have to use some of these younger guys to their to their strengths. Like obviously with the athletic defensive ends that we have, that can go tuck underneath under the some of the biggest tackles. Then you got, like you said, Cox and Hargrave up the middle. Hargrave, who's been pretty solid this year, despite having a few off games. And obviously, what Gannon needs to do at times, in order, because obviously you're going up Teddy Bridgewater in a decent offensive line. This is at the point in time where you guys start incorporating the blitz a whole lot more. I mean, if you guys need to, in their case, if you do need a man-to-man coverage, I wouldn't be too upset about that. But you cannot. I repeat, do not use these soft coverages where you're giving up 40, say 30 plus yards to a decent wide receiver. You guys gotta have to really attack, especially up the middle. If they're going to go with the run game, gotta plug that up the middle, because you got guys on the edge who can cover that edge. Because there's a lot of things that the Eagles should really need to work to emphasize, as obviously stop the run game and definitely have a really good pass defense, because we are almost kind of in the bottom of the league in those kind of categories.
Yeah, no doubt. And and I will drop one extra nugget here as far as the secondary goes. I'm gonna look for the corners to aid in the aggression. And what I mean by that is Jonathon Gannon is not necessarily the one telling these guys to play as soft as they are. Sometimes based on a corner's matchup, whoever the receiver is, sometimes they're the ones giving themselves the cushion because they're afraid of getting burnt over the top. So they want to keep everything underneath. Well, because of the circumstance that Denver has speed at their disposal, you're probably going to see Slay with some cushion here and there. You're probably going to see the same thing with Steven Nelson, because Slay's fast, but he's not fast.
Like he's just not as
And
fast as he used to be.
yeah, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing with Steven Nelson. Steven Nelson's more of he's more of that aggressive type of corner that's that you're not going to get away from that easily in terms of breaking the tackle. He's more of a physical corner, more than a speedy corner that you're not going to be able to take the top off of the defense with him in the backfield. But on the bright side here, we are going to get Rodney back, so he's going to be able to aid in those kinds of coverages, depending on if Denver is going to try and go over the top with us. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen unless Cortland Sutton gets going early. But all this is going to be based on how well we stop the run. If we're able to keep the Broncos one dimensional, that's going to allow the secondary to become more comfortable in their coverage. They can creep closer and closer and closer to their receivers on the scrimmage. Then, with that said, they're going to be able to buy the defensive line more time to get to Teddy Bridgewater. So I think I think again um, I think again, Jonathon Gannon is going to have a battle in the trenches, like it's going to be on the offensive side of the football. The offensive side of the football is going to be all about how well the Eagles' offensive line dominates the defensive line of the Broncos. Well, this is going to be, to me, a vice versa with our defense and how well we're able to pressure Teddy Bridgewater. And, it's bad enough that we allow quarterbacks, above average quarterbacks or elite quarterbacks, to throw for completion percentages in the 80s. Because, like, that's flat out ridiculous. So Bridgewater's already averaging 70%, but it's not a lot of over the top deep balls. Yes, he's averaging almost 8 yards a attempt, but it's a lot of whether it's slants or passes over the middle with Noah Fant, on seam routes like to use Dallas Goddard in that aspect. This is going to be about the defensive line, simply put. And I'm going to be looking for Jonathon Gannon to not be as conservative with getting cute in terms of confusing Teddy with stunts and disguises. No. Turn that aggression switch on. Go after
Exactly.
him. Trust that you have the talent to beat the Broncos offensive line. And to me, I think that's the key for the defense to win this game against Denver.
Exactly. I mean, to really wrap this up, and just you gotta play aggressive. And if you can do that, I think this defense can be successful. But then again, if you just get lackadaisical, not and blow the soft coverages, and just not play to the best of your ability, this is what's going to kill us. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. And so, as make it break it for this. I mean, Denver, decent team, but this is kind of a make it break it for the Eagles because, I mean, this obviously just like it's just what it is. Like we're still figuring out what we have, and now obviously we're going to we're not that young. We're young, but we're not like really young. Just all I gotta say is just play to the best of your ability. Nope. And obviously with Steven Nelson, who could be not a lockdown core as he used to be, but he can still be those, that pesky, just kind of that corner, like we'll just, is in this aggressive type in which you got to play off of that strength. And then you got Slay, obviously a speedy corner, can still be aggressive, but he's not the same player that he used to be. And, just really, all in all, just you got to play clean. That's just all I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And while playing clean, maybe asking too much at this point for how the defense has performed over the course of the last 9 weeks. Um, it's not too much to ask at the same time, because a lot of the mistakes that are happening are easily correctable, and they shouldn't happen with the consistency that they do. So, well, one last thing while we are at the end of assessing the defense against the Broncos offense. The Broncos are 22nd in the league in scoring. They average just over 20 points a game at 20.8. So, depending on how you feel the Eagles defense attacks the Broncos offense, what is your score prediction for the Broncos on offense?
If our defense plays well, I think they can hold them under 20 points, because, like you said, they are 22nd in scoring, and it shows like the teams that they played, the Denver Broncos have played against, they've been held under to at least 20 points or less at times, except for the Dallas game. I feel like that's the only time that they played that they scored over 20 plus points. But in this case, I feel like they can at least get, say, if lucky, they could probably manage to sneak over 20 points, but I don't think they're going to be really. I think best case, I mean, for them, it's probably under 20 points.
All right, I think that's fair. I think that's fair enough. For me, a good day for me for the Eagles defense would be holding the Broncos to 17 points. And I think we're capable of doing it, even in hostile territory. Yeah, Denver is the home team. They are, I think the Broncos are 2.5-point favorites. So even with that, if our defense shows up, the way I think it should, I think we can hold. Yeah, like you said, I think we can hold Denver to under 20 points. At most, I would have them scoring 17, and so I think my overall score prediction, I can see us scoring 28. So I'll say Philly will take this 28-17. Yeah, it's an 11-point game, but with what we've seen out of the offense as of late, I think I think they have the better matchup to Denver's secondary, more so than the run defense. But because we're talking defense here, I think we could hold Denver to 17.
Yeah, I was thinking 28-17 as well, because I mean, obviously, this shows the way that the Denver is ranked. You know, they sometimes have a hard time scoring at least under 20. Because then you see it, like we said, you know, in games that I've seen, I think that mostly they ever had was like 19. So, I mean, it shows that they are having a hard time at least getting under at least 20 points. And except for I mean, there was like a couple games where they scored at least 20 or more, but I feel like if our defense does show up and played well, what we are trying to ask them to do, I think we can see between 7. Yeah, I think see at least 17, because this is where we're hopefully we can see it.
Yeah, and well, I think it looks like we knocked episode 2 out of the park here, much like Jorge Soler did in Houston in Game 6 of the World Series. I think we knocked episode 2 here out of the park, dissecting and predicting our expectations of the Eagles defense against the Denver Broncos offense this Sunday, 4:00, 4:25 game up in Mile High against the Broncos in Denver. For myself, Lindy End Zone, and Philly Sports Talk Podcast, we thank you for hanging out, hearing what we've had to say, and even giving your opinions in the comments or the live chat on this episode of Touchdown Talk. Philly Sports Talk, appreciate you once again.
Hey, pleasure to be on, man. Despite the fact we haven't done anything together in months, I mean, it's good to see our old friendly face again.
Yeah, it was quite some time. Still remember the round table when we did the draft reaction and everything. And well, I think now that a lot of our channels are, starting to, grow and improve and evolve, more opportunities I think are
Exactly.
on the horizon. As long as we continue to stay creative the way we are, um, you know, more stuff like this will happen in the future, and I'm definitely excited to bring more people along to hang out with me and whoever my future guests would be in these streams. I do have an idea for episode 3 of Touchdown Talk. I'm going to give it more thought. There may be one coming out tomorrow to keep you guys in touch. I have an idea for it. But for now, we're going to close this episode of the preview the Eagles defense against the Denver Broncos. Again, for myself, Lindy, and Philly Sports Talk podcast joining me. Y'all have a good night. You already know the deal. Bird brothers and sisters. Fly Eagles fly. Bleed green. MFFLs, go Mavericks. Braves World Series champs.
Oh Lord.
Take care. Take care of yourselves, everybody. Continue to have a good weekend, and I will see you soon.